Marcus, so yeah, commissioning, everyone's doing it allegedly. If I type in commissioning in Google, everyone's offering it, right? So are we in a race to the bottom here? Is there any value in it?
So I've used that term a lot, race to the bottom, right? Where our services, I guess you could say, sometimes feel like they're being commoditized, that we only do a certain little fraction or this or that. But when you start to really jump into commissioning and you've been doing it for a little while, you can start to see the impact that you can have, like that you should have. Let's should have, right? So like I've said in other recordings, is people will say, how many personalities to commissioning we had? We went over that, right? We have a lot, yeah. Right? But I mean, should you really basically have to have that many personalities? And at the exact same time, it's one of those things where you look at it and you say to yourself, where is the future of this industry going? And I always basically like to say, I'm going to be honest and say this: it should never be low bid. It should never basically, whenever someone's here, design, bid, build, first thing people think is like, oh, it's low bid. You got to have 3 low bids. Like, if you're thinking about going low bid with commissioning, and say, hey, I'm just going to hit code minimum. Once again, what have I said before? If you just hit code minimum, you've barely just not broken the law. Okay. So if you think code minimum is good enough, then that's your perspective. But race to the bottom, in our industry, people have got to realize what value we bring, and the owner, you got to have a relationship with the owner. You should never just basically, and that's another thing too, is that's the industry's fault, is every single time you have the opportunity to speak with an owner, to actually explain to them, what commissioning is, what does it mean, what level of commissioning is required, and I think full transparency with the owner, and then basically apples to apples. We've said this before. I think it has to become more, I don't want to say legitimate, right? But I think more defined of what you're getting, when you're getting, how you're getting it. So an owner can always say, what's the value? I think we all need to work on the value, so we don't basically have this race to the bottom. And another thing too is certifications, right? Basically certifications and qualifications, that we've said this before. You cannot go with someone in the back of their car. I believe that you should always look for the RFQs and the qualifications of the people who are actually performing the work. Do not go with low bid. Do not go with, make it a qualifications based process.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. So I think there is a bit of a race to the bottom going on at the moment. I think at the moment the commissioning industry is sort of on the same trajectory as the tab industry. So you think back in the 60s, tab was born because systems were going in, they weren't working well, and tab comes to be in and it sorts out for a while. Then it becomes a race to the bottom, and then basically it becomes a paperwork bullshit exercise sometimes. Calm down, everybody, right? And I think commissioning sort of is on that track. But one of the reasons is the commissioning industry is doing this to itself. It's not communicating its value, its ROI very well at all, right? It's not. So take the analogy with lawyers, right? So there are the Harvey Specters from Suits who get all the money, and then there's the ambulance chasers, right? So you got to ask yourself, are you an ambulance chaser or are you Harvey Specter? You need to be Harvey Specter, right?
Well, what you just said about tab is like, it's so true. Test and balance. Like the other day we put something out and someone's like, don't just call it tab. That's a soda, It's like, call it, I know it's funny. Call it test and balance. So here's the interesting part about test and balance, right? Is whenever someone's like, well, how much is that going to cost me? Someone's like, they automatically, people just go, oh, it's $150 an hour for a tech at 8 hours, $1,200 a day. You're like, is that what we've been reduced to? All of us? It's not. You do not want this attitude. Ready? Okay. You get on a job site and you're dealing with the subcontractor, and they're like, they know what you need. Okay. Sometimes they're going to play dumb because they're like, just do what he says, do what she says. Right. And so then I've had someone say to me before, I go, so what do you think? Let's start with this. They go, whatever you want, boss. And I'm like, no, that's not how it goes. We're working together. You know what the comment is? I'm not paid to think, you are. I'm paid to do. Tell me what you need. That is, and I'm not saying this about test and balance, because those people are quality, right? Especially when you're NAB certified, I mean quality, right? But when it's just like what's happened in the industry when someone's like, I just follow the drawings. I joke around with people all the time. And I go, so if we were building a church and there was a drawing that basically showed a not a urinal, but basically a toilet, right? Yeah. There was a toilet drawn in basically where there should have been a pew. I'm like, would you core drill? Would you drop that right there? Or would you go, whoa, let's take a minute and think about this. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it feels like it's just change order madness out there, right? You know, whenever someone's like, you see that boat over there? Its name was Change Order, and it was like a 70-foot yacht. You're like, there's something wrong.
Yeah, that's the game, right? The incentives are aligned for that system.
It can't just be, here's one person out there for one day. It's just like there has to be a team effort, because if you do have issues, which there will always be issues on job. There's not one job in my life that actually everything was perfect. And when it comes to tab, those folks out there are experts. They are there to basically make sure you're working with everyone and the controls, setting the K factors, going through the CV values. I mean, water and air. It is, like a precise science. No, you're trying to figure out exactly what's going on downstream, upstream, over here, this. It's a collective team effort with commissioning and tab and controls. And that has got to be given the quality of what it really deserves, because that's the last 5% that they are making your building work. And they are tweaking that Ferrari. I hope people understand how important that last 5% is in controls, commissioning, and tab. You don't got those people working together. You got a broken building. And those people are my best friends.
Well, that's it. So to wrap this up then, yeah, I think we are heading to the bottom, and we don't do enough to communicate our values. So we've got to work on that. But I like the S-curve theory. So this is like, you get the early adopters and it fades out, then you get the mass adoption, and that fades out and something else comes in, right? So we've had, like, if you go to the 50s and early 60s, loads of AC systems go in, they're not very good. Tab comes along, right? That's an S-curve. And all of a sudden, tab's the hot thing. Everyone's making money, and then that starts fading off. And then commissioning comes in, right? And the green building movement. And that's another S-curve. Now, my personal view is, and this is a question for another day, but I'm going to wrap it up on this. The S-curve of green building commissioning and green building certification is flattening out. It's going away. And what is going to replace that is, let's call it digital commissioning, smart buildings. Virtual commissioning,
detection, monitoring based, ongoing.
That's where the puck has moved to. Some people can see that there. Some people are still chasing where it was. So I think, yeah, change is afoot. Let me put it that way.